Welcome to another episode of Hawk Talk, the auto detailing podcast. Today we're going worldwide. We're going global. You know, some people are going to stay in the United States. Not this guy. We're going to Australia. The Australian wonder, Matt Gibb. Matt, before you get a chance to say hello to everybody, I just want to say I've been doing the YouTube thing for 5-6 years, and you have been a steady commenter. And now a lot of people comment, but your comments are always so technical. It became very clear to me in a very short amount of time that you know a lot about polishing paint. So with that, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Nick. Awesome to be here. And I think this is probably my 8th, 9th or 10th podcast. And it blows my mind that I keep getting invited to do podcasts, considering it's been 30 years since I sort of got into this as a hobby and then run a business and all that stuff. And never really considered myself to be doing anything special. Really, it's just my passion, and that's it. But obviously, yeah, I'm a bit of a definitely tech head and very analytical, and I do a lot of research and ask a lot of questions and try a lot of things.
And so you're the kind of person that I want to talk to. Whether there are enough paint nerds out there, I don't know. But once you picked up a polisher and you sort of see your limitations on what you can do, what you can't do, you start testing it, you start realizing what you don't know. It becomes pretty addictive. And it's not all the detailers who get this into polishing, but the ones who do, this is for you. Because I think, Matt, you could teach new beginners who are new, I guess that's the same word, new beginners, a little bit about polishing. So can we start there before we get technical? Like, if I'm just getting into paint polishing, what do you wish was being taught? What do you think that people should know out there?
Should know? Well, I mean, obviously the first thing I can off of my top of my head is every machine has its place. If you're new, you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive machine, really. But if you can start off with just a long throw or a 12 mil orbit DA, whether it's a Shine Mate, a Max Shine, a Roop, I mean, Roop heads would be great, Flex would be great. But even if you start off with that or even a Harbor Freight or something, I mean, they're going to be bringing out new ones soon that are going to be better than their previous offerings. Just don't get caught into this whole thing of, DA versus rotary versus gear driven versus drum versus, all that stuff. Just start out with a good DA or a rotary if you wish, or just buy, a 3-inch DA and then obviously a larger one and just go from there. And don't get caught up in the hype of all the sort of new things that come out and I've got to have everything. So that's probably the first thing I can think of, really. And
I mean, obviously, you know a thing or two about paint. I wonder if you could continue the conversation about your advice to beginners. I'm just going to flash some of your best ofs here on the screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see some of the work Matt's done.
Yeah, and the thing is I'm not just good with paint. I'm also one thing I specialized in was polishing exterior trim with polish, but not just polish, with other very interesting materials that give you a semi-permanent to permanent result.
But you polished exterior trim because I talked to Jason Kilmer and he talked about exterior trim and he was like, I just like to let trim be trim, right?
Oh,
and
look, yeah, sure. And some of them you can't do. The really textured ones you can't do.
Look at this before and after, though. Look at this before and after. I just want to show that.
Yeah, sure. That's a Mitsubishi Lancer. Yeah.
Okay, I interrupted you. Sorry. I've got all your pictures here in a slide.
Okay,
so
well,
let's talk about trim in a second. But how did you transform this hazed up?
So that was not just haze, that's UV damage, but obviously other severe swells and scratches and whatnot. That was 1,000 grit by hand, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and then just a foam pad with a single polish system for my mentor who's been making polishes with his multinational company and other products for many industries since like the 90s. He was the first guy ever to create a single polish system that was water-based and burn-proof, basically. So you can't put a burn mark in a panel. So 1,000 grit all the way up to that. So obviously that's before and after.
So you did 1,000 grit, and then how did you compound out the sanding marks?
I basically sanded to about 5,000 and didn't compound. I used a single polish system, which is basically a product that's water-based. It's oil and water, not water and oil. There are differences between those two. And it basically is like a semi-compound, a polish, and a finishing polish all in the one product. So it's one
You've been
liquid.
telling me about you've been telling me about these products that I can't get access to over here forever. When I would send you a message
Yeah,
about a tricky spot I got into, and the
yeah,
polish system you were used to was one that I didn't have access to, which I was always bummed at because it
yeah.
sounded very
It's
interesting.
available. It's just no one knows of the brand that much because they don't play the same game as everybody else. They don't want to play the same game. And obviously it's just marketing, and it's 5% of what they do. And my mentor's company that he's the director of, and he's been polishing for 40 years. He's a painter and he's a chemist and all the rest of it. Like they make stuff for NASA and they make stuff for all sorts of companies and water filtration, purification systems and chemicals for janitorial, industrial, commercial, whatever industry you name it. So they're not just doing detailing stuff. But yeah, so it's basically I went from 1,000 grit, 1,500, 2,000. I don't like going too far, too big a gap. And then
In between your
3,000.
sanding marks, so in between your
Yeah,
sanding grits.
yeah, and then obviously sand twice as much with each one you go. So
Wait, okay,
1,000
so
grit
say
by
that
hand.
again. There's a lot of people who've never sanded before, so yeah, start there with
Yeah.
twice as much for the next step.
So whatever you do, the next one you do, you should do twice as many passes. So if you were 1,500 Trizact and then 3,000 Trizact, make sure your 3,000 you do twice as long at minimum. So you get those 1,500s out. Otherwise, you'll be chasing 1,500 marks for a long time. So
Interesting.
you got to, especially if you go that much gap. I'd still rather go 2,000 after that, and then 3,000, 5,
So
8,
so
12,
1,000, 15 to
3, 5 at least. I even go 8 and 12 sometimes because I just prefer, even though it might be a longer process, sanding makes compounding and polishing seem like crap in comparison. Like literally, it's cold. Like Jason's saying the other day, PS.
Jason Kilmer on Hawk Talk
Yeah,
podcast episode
yeah,
number 2.
absolutely. If you're good at it, you can remove far less paint than compounding away. And I just figure it's just safer and easier to go, okay, I'm going to sand more, polish less, because there's so many variables with polishing. With sanding, obviously there's a lot more. Jason knows about it than me, but I'd rather sand really fine and then just get my blue pad from my foam manufacturer in Europe, one of probably 2 or 3 I'm going to have soon, and literally just go single polish system, 1 pad, bang, see ya, done, or 2, 2 different pads if I want to do a 2-step, rather
So
than go 1,500 and then compound the crap out of it, and maybe you get those marks out easy and then polish it. I just find that it's better to sand more, polish less.
I like that. So what about dual action sanding? Because Jason Kilmer says he doesn't do that. He's like get good at hand sanding because the pigtail.
Yeah.
We're talking about pigtails being an issue. What do you think about dual action sanding?
I love it. I love DA sanding. Yes, you can get pigtails, but there's a reason why sometimes with that. But look, I think hand sanding is very good as far as feel. I've always been a guy that feels and touches and looks close and that sort of thing. But I've always found, and this is me, if Jason reckons he's not that good at sanding, or he's based on what I watched the other day, he's saying that he doesn't rate himself like stupidly highly. If he reckons he's pretty average, I'm friggin' woeful in comparison. But look, DA sanding, it all comes down to the brand of discs that you buy, what orbit size are they actually designed to be used with, and what machines have you got? Do you have pneumatic air sanders? Do you have electric ones? And if you've got 3M Trizact, for example, or Kovac Super Bufflex, which is a great dry system.
Say that one more time. You kind of stumbled. You mumbled a little bit.
Okay.
I heard you, but if they've never heard of it, so I heard 3M Trizact. But what was the Bufflex?
It's Kovac Super Bufflex. It's a green disc and a black disc from Japan. They're sold I believe that they're sold in the USA under the Eagle Abrasives brand. So they are a very, very shallow scratch pattern, very easy to use disc. Now the Trizacts are designed to be used with a 5mm orbit sander. So I have the Makita BO6050 electric sander, which is forced rotation and random orbital, but the random orbital mode has a pad break in it so that when you're DA sanding, you're not getting full rotation. It's just wiggling a bit. If you get full rotation like a polisher, that's when you get serious pigtails.
So if you can get your hands on a palm sander from
Yeah,
like
an air
the
sander's
Home
better.
Depot, okay, yeah, but I'm talking, okay, yeah, an air sander's better, pneumatic air sander. But what about these palm sanders from like Home Depot that still have the brake in them and everything, the pad brake?
If they've got a pad brake in them and they're 5 mil orbit, the Trizact discs will work great on
Okay.
them. But I believe, and this is based on knowledge from others like Jason Rose and others that I respect, who taught me these things, is that if you have got a 9 mil, 8 mil, 12 mil, 15 mil, random orbital, and you are sanding with that, it makes the sanding disc more aggressive. So it probably is going to create more tick marks and pigtails and all the rest of it.
Like I had an 8 millimeter orbit torque, and I even had the Duetto, which was I think 12 millimeters.
Yeah,
orbit.
I like that one.
And but with sanding though, like even with an interface pad on there, I just found like I would just get pigtails all the time.
Yeah,
but I didn't realize that certain discs were made for that. I mean, I would clean it up every 2 seconds, man. I was blowing out. I was like doing everything I could. Yep. It was pigtails all the time.
Yeah, well, that's I don't have a problem with the 6050. I've taken most of the.
What's the 6050?
It's basically it's the Makita PO 5000C that they brought out. It's basically I don't know what that is. Makita PO 5000C is a large, basically dual mode, force rotation and random orbital 5.5 millimeter orbit polisher that's been available in the US. We've got the 6000 version. You guys got the 5000. So you got the 5-inch. We got the 6-inch. The Makita BO 6050 is like Makita's version of a Festool Rotex, which is 5.5 mil orbit, same specs as the bigger brother PO 5000, but it has a pad brake in it in random mode, but it just doesn't have the same powerful motor and gearbox. It's a light duty force rotation polisher and a good random orbital sander.
And this is called the BO 6050J.
Yeah, 50J. Yeah.
Okay, I found it online.
Yeah, and that's what I use. And only thing I use that for, I find every time I've hand sanded, again, because I'm not that experienced, I've done it with hose, I've done it with a spray bottle. I hate getting these big, long sort of, groove marks in it and trying to get all these groove marks out. Probably because I'm being too aggressive.
And Jason Kilmer is like, that's a technique thing, right? And we can both admit it is a technique thing. And we're good at what we do, but it's like, but I still get these gouges, right? Yeah. So to get there, you probably should go get trained by Jason Kilmer. Whereas DA, yeah.
Yeah, so DA, I mainly would sand to fix an isolated scratch somewhere, and I'll do that by hand with a disc or a paper. But when it came to oxidation, and oxidation mainly, I would sand with a DA. Gives you a nice shallow scratch pattern. You're going to have just a nice grayish film on the surface, and you are, then just going to run over it with your polisher and bang on. Very shallow.
What about
you've got to have it. I don't get them much.
You don't get them with the Makita BO 6040 and what?
The 50, not the 40. 40 was the older version. The 50. I mean, look, you can get a pigtail from picking up one little bit of grit and carrying it over with the disc as it moves, and bang, there's a pigtail. But they usually, if you use a Trizact 3000 and a 5000 or a Kovacs, you're pretty much, you're going to have some kind of marks, but they're so shallow that you really are not going to be chasing what you're probably chasing in most cases. I haven't found that anyway, but I mainly only sand for oxidation with the DA and then by hand to fix scratches. But I would out of 10, I would rate myself a 2 out of 10 as a sander. I'm not that great. I know a lot about it, but I'm not. I'm more into my best thing is finishing out with polishing and correction and finishing out. Mainly finishing better than people can cut probably faster than me, but I can finish. I've finished very well over the years with rotary DA. 6 mil orbit, all the different orbits. Forced, everything.
So I want to talk about Jason Kilmer's story because he was born with cerebral palsy, and his mother gave him up for adoption. Possibly was going to have an abortion, and then didn't at the last second. Thanks to someone talking her out of it. I mean,
thank goodness.
He would admit to being a miracle, and it's remarkable that he's here. And he turns out
Yeah.
to just be this world class, greatest in the world at what he does, sanding and polishing to showroom finish. Interestingly enough, that's your sister there. You were in a fatal crash where the guy in the other car ended up dying. Your little
Yeah.
sister, and you can see in this YouTube video, this little car seat. Um, Car seats
Yep.
were a new thing, right? You were 6 days or 6 weeks old at the time.
Six weeks of age, but I was in a cane bassinet on the front seat, on the bench, on the bucket seat, bench seat. Yeah, she was in one of the child seats. So yeah, pretty nasty. The guy didn't give way to us, and we ended up basically hitting his right front wheel, and he barrel rolled over us and went through the boot of our car, and sadly got decapitated by the roof when it got basically crushed, pretty much, as you can see there, got flattened. So this is like we're doing probably, I don't know, 80 and then kilometers an hour, probably 50 mile an hour, and slowing down. And he just was supposed to give way to us going the other way, and he just kept going, and boom. So yeah.
I mean,
so I'm a living walking miracle, and so is Jason.
Yeah, man. Like on the one hand, I'm sure you don't remember it, but on the other hand, there's all this trauma workout now that says the body keeps the score. There was that book or something. So like the body stores all this. So whatever you didn't remember, I'm sure affected you. Like what impact did being in that crash have for you throughout the rest of your life?
Well, initially they thought, okay, yeah, broken leg, cut lip, no worries, okay. 10 years later, why is our son not growing very much? He's still only like 4 foot nothing or whatever. So a bunch of tests for a year, probably 6 months or so at the IMVS, which is a research, medical research place. Tons of injections and tests and whatever else. Okay, so and scans. Okay, so your thyroid's shot, your pituitary gland doesn't work, your body doesn't produce any cortisol, which is your stress hormone or something like that, I think it is, in your adrenal. And your hypothalamus is damaged, and left side of your brain's been shifted across. You pushed across, and sort of one side's shoved up against the end, and the other one's sort of been moved across. So it was, okay, you need these tablets, and we've got testosterone injections, have that, and then eventually after 10 or 15 years of getting an injection in the bum for 20 years, here's some pumps and here's some gels, there's some liquids you can just rub on every day. So, but it basically made me always be, to some degree, like when I was 10, I looked 6. When I was 15, I looked 10. When I was 20, I looked 15. And my mental age and my actual physical age were always off. So it's taken me a lot of years to sort of grow and mature and smarten up and stuff. But I don't know, found my passion in detailing and obviously video stuff, which is what you can see behind me. And yeah, I've just kept pushing forward and breaking new ground and striving ahead and just go, whatever happens, I'll just face it and deal with it. So,
well, that's what I'm curious about. Well, go ahead.
So yeah, it's been it's made my life obviously more difficult than some other people's lives, but at the end of the day, I think I've come out of it pretty well considering, and it's maybe it made me, the way I am, where it's like I'm left-handed. All my other family members are right-handed, but I'm ambidextrous, so I can do both. I can throw darts with both arms. I can play cricket with both arms. I have my knife in my left hand and my fork in my right, which not all left-handers do, but I write straight. I'm not crooked like this. But yeah, maybe it's just made me have a very analytical, very technical, geeky sort of brain. Not to Kevin Brown's level, but certainly a decent
Kevin
level.
Brown, if folks are still listening, if you don't know who Kevin Brown is, yeah, Buff Daddy. I figure that folks are still listening, probably.
The way he
like that. But I just, to interrupt you intentionally, not to be a jerk, but it was just that I feel like a lot of detailers come from broken homes and rough backgrounds, and detailing is a way that we sort of like find a path. And I'm over exaggerating and stumbling on the words a little bit, but I didn't meet my dad till I was 18, right? But I had a good life. Like, I'm a white guy, I grew up in America, but like at the same time, I understand how a difficult background can be really hard, and how maybe that, and I don't know how to put this into words, but if the impetus is to work hard, we find a path through detailing where if we work our asses off, we can get really good at it. And so I don't know. I wonder, there's a lot of interesting backgrounds that come into detailing. And I wonder if you could just talk about how detailing found you or how you found detailing, and then,
Yep.
maybe a little bit of that part of your journey.
Yeah, pretty much buying my first car in 1993, 92, 93, around there somewhere. So I'm about 20
How
at
old
that
were you?
stage. 20.
Okay.
So I got my license, got my L's at 16. Took me 3 or 4 years to get my P's. I stuffed up about 3 or 4 times. Finally got it. And I said, okay, I'm going to buy a car. And I just went to a bunch of dealers and found something small that did the job. It was an old 89 Suzuki Swift. And I thought, you know what? I've paid 10 grand cash for this car. It's my first car. It's 3 years of age, 3 years old, this car. I want to take care of it. So first thing I did was go down to the
Yeah.
auto parts store, because that's all there is. Back then was auto parts stores, like auto bumper to bumper, which became Auto Barn, and went, well, what should I buy to take care of this thing? Didn't know jack shit about it. The guy said, look, right at the moment, Maguire's is the best stuff. And back in those days, in like 91 to 93, when they came to Australia, it was way ahead of everything else that was available at the time, which was like Turtle Wax, Repo, and Kitten. And just started using that by hand, and then, fire glaze and a few other things, and spent 6, 7 years working on that car, learning stuff. But I actually met a guy in 94 or 95 who had a business called Gawler Mobile Car Clean. And he was coming out every 2 weeks and washing and protecting my father's company fleet vehicles.
Okay.
So, and I got to meet him, started chatting with the guy, got him to do my car. And if what he was doing back then was, you'd look at it now and go, that's prehistoric, like drying with basically like a bath towel, and that sort of thing, and chamois and whatnot. But I just got enthused about it and learned some things off the guy, and just started practicing. And then I bought a rotary and some pads, and started learning and practicing. And between 93 and 2000, the passion just took over. I bought my dream car in late 94, which was a Ford XA Falcon 2-door coupe, which is basically the Mad Max, the Mad Max car shape.
Do I have
After
any of these in the slides you sent me or no?
that one, no.
No. Okay.
I bought a yellow Fairmont coupe with a 351 4V V8 with about 500 horsepower. Previous owner, put a race camshaft in it and all the other good bits. And I paid about $1,500 for that car, and the passion just went from there. Just started polishing that and learning stuff. And then 2000, from there onwards, the passion just took over, and I had the internet, good old dial-up, and just went on Autopia and all these other places. And I've just learned from a bunch of people, asked questions, commented myself, trial and error. Didn't have YouTube back in those days. It was just do it yourself. Learn a bit off
Yeah, I was
the old
talking
guy.
to Jamie Gonzalez from J&G Auto just last week on the podcast, and he had a really interesting comment. He said, he was doing detailing when detailers were just the help, right? It wasn't cool. But what he also commented on, is we acknowledge how much the industry's grown through YouTube, is he's like, it's still a very young industry. So what is your comment on that, having been there closer to the genesis of the Autopia forum age and the advent of the dual action machine? But do you think we're still a relatively young industry? Like, what's your take on where we're at now for people who are just kind of getting into
I mean, really, we've detailing to some degree really sort of been around since the 30s or something, putting animal waxes on cars and stuff like that, or whatever they had back then. But I suppose it's all just come out of the body. Is it really come out of the body shop sort of thing, where it's like, okay, we've painted this car, we fixed the car, we've painted it, now we've got to sand and buff it. And it's we offshooted from that. I'm not really sure if we did or not, but technically, I'm not sure if it's really young, but it's certainly not what I would call really old. I mean, there's industries that have been around since the 1800s, I suppose. I imagine some things have come and gone.
Well, and I think technically speaking, but I guess with so many people and such a low barrier for entry getting into detailing every year, and a lot of them finding it through YouTube, it does feel like this industry has changed a lot since I got into it. I was telling customers what ceramic coatings were. I was really trying to explain what it was. Wax was still the main term, and now ceramic coatings are pretty in the vernacular. Like, people know what they are. And I just feel like, to me, it feels like, well, okay, what else is there? But it's going to keep advancing. And I just wondered if you thought it was still a relatively young industry.
I don't mind on the YouTube thing. I was obviously around from started in '93 as a hobbyist with my first car, and call myself a complete rank amateur, or even not even that, probably just a rookie at that point. By 2000, I'd probably say I was an amateur. Then obviously from 2002, I became a pro. Um, but YouTube's good and social media is good, but I don't think you should just rely on YouTube and basically go, well, I've watched some YouTube videos. I'm a detailer now, and I'm going to go out there and kick ass. Like the people that got into it when I did them before me, like Mike Phillips and all that, way back in the 80s and 70s and all that, that was a different time. I mean, 70s, I've talked about this before in podcasts before. I don't envy the guys that were detailing in the 70s. Those chemicals were harsh, and those crystalline silica abrasives in those polishes and compounds, man, like they cut more than aluminum oxide and ceramic ones do, but man, they scour like shit. And then they'd use corn flour and water or something like that to polish with, and all they had was wool and a bit of foam if they were lucky. It was freaking horrible, so we're lucky these days to have what we have. But I just don't think you should just be someone who just goes, I'll watch some YouTube videos and I'll go out and start a business. Like YouTube's good, but you know what? There's a lot of, I don't want to use the word wank factor, but or BS. It's not BS. There's some great knowledge out there, but there's a lot of misinformation too out there that's not actually correct. And you shouldn't just rely on YouTube. Go out and do some trainings, spend the money to invest in it, and realize that detailing isn't always glamorous. It isn't glamorous really the most of the time, unless you're one of the few that gets to work on someone's collection with like 100+ cars or 50 cars.
So who do you watch? What YouTubers
what
do
we
you
call
like?
cream puffs. Well, I don't watch much YouTube anymore. I mean, I've obviously keep an eye on what you and Ivan do. I really like Ivan and yourself. I used to watch a lot of Rare Company. I don't anymore. I still respect the guys and what they do. Obviously, being to Boise a couple of times before they had their big shop and everything, what they're doing now. But
They're like
I
a
don't really
multinational corporation these days. How big they
these
are.
days.
Like
Back when I was here in
TR SEMA, like that was so professionally done. I was blown away.
But yeah, exactly. But I'll say this though, like the brands that they have on there, they're great brands. But there's many other brands people have never heard of that are just as good, if not better. That people don't know.
It's called marketing, my friend. It's called marketing.
There's a
lot
of market. There's a lot of too much market. There's a bit too much marketing and too much marketing bullshit going on. And there's many other brands that are around.
But that's it. You can have the best detail shop in town if nobody knows about you. Like that's what I learned with Hawk Pro Detailing as a business. It was like,
yep,
I'm really good at what I do, but marketing is huge, man. It's huge.
I mean, you have to do it. There's nothing wrong with
lament it being like a necessary evil. I think is just a little bit too. I don't know. I just feel like it's acceptable to be okay because like that's my life now as I market for DIY Detail, my company.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Jack from Starna Gloss, and I interviewed him on this channel during SEMA, and he's like, what I didn't realize, I'm like, what surprised you about the industry? He's like, what I didn't realize is like the most important thing for any company is marketing. And I was like, whoa, mind blown. Because of course you have to have a great product. Let's just assume your product is really good.
And you've got to be relevant. You've got to be relevant. Like some things with like some brands is they've only brought out ceramic stuff, which I'm not I mean, let's face it, according to my mentor, ceramic coatings are barely on the ceramic scale at all. And I don't really have anything. I don't buy much these days because I'm retired from detailing. I just tinker in the garage and practice and test for a few companies occasionally. But it's that's what I'm trying to thought. I hate that.
You were talking about marketing and ceramics.
Yeah, marketing's important.
People think.
Yeah, well, look, he said it's barely on the ceramic scale at all, those coatings, and they are, and they're very good. There's a lot of good ones, but one thing you don't want to do, and I think my comment on Todd Helm's post recently about him saying about there's a lot of people lying about Rupes saying that they don't make their own this and don't make their own that. I don't know if they do or not. I'm pretty sure they do though. They're a great engineering company. They've been around that long. They should know how.
I don't know about your post at all, but I'm assuming there was some detail drama going on.
I just put it. Most of my comments are typically never short. They always go long. I can't help it sometimes.
Well, but that's really, why I always have respected you, because every time you leave a comment, there's no fluff there. It's like the 1500 grit sandpaper and the aluminum oxide and it's like, damn, he just wrote an essay about this video I did in my garage. This guy must know what he's talking about. So it's like, here we are, finally.
So really, it's with companies. Marketing is important, right? It matters. You've got to get known. But if you become a company that is 90% marketing, 10% R&D, or was 50-50, or a good ratio of marketing, advertising, and R&D, and innovating, or at least making just great products consistently, fine. But when the companies become big marketing and all their focus is marketing and everything else is out the window, eventually they're going to fall behind. They might stay around for a long time, they may not, but eventually they're going to disappear. Look at Bedford Trucks. Look at BlackBerry phones, and a lot of other companies that were once, the innovator, the leader. They backed off on the marketing. Something happened. They backed off, on the R&D and the investment in innovation, and they just was all marketing. And eventually they just stopped doing anything and just marketed the same shit over and over in different ways. And then one day they're just irrelevant. They're gone. So that's what I don't want to happen to Rupus. I mean, it probably won't happen, but they are a marketing company, but they are a very, 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 very good engineering company. But they've got to keep innovating, even though.
What do you think of their new 3-inch polisher? The
HLR 75.
Tried it?
Haven't tried it. Yep, HLR 75. Yep. Me and my friend.
I tried it at SEMA. Loved it, and then I got it in the garage, and it was like a different setting, right? I'm not in SEMA, and I'm a little less starstruck by Rupes or whatever. And I'm sitting here with this thing, and I'm like, do I have carpal tunnel after just doing an A-pillar? Like, my mind completely changed about it. It was just so much vibration and torque. I'm like, give me the 75E, the corded version. I don't want that.
Yeah,
I think the cordless version is a bad move financially, unless you love that idea. Like, I would take the Pixie, the Flex PXE80 any day over it. And that's not me shooting hate. That's me trying to stay in my Hawk Pro lane where I always tell the truth. Because I am the face of DIY detail now, but like to people out there, the Flex PXE80 cordless is fantastic. And I wanted to love the Rupes. It's just, it was hard. It was hard on my hands and my elbows.
Yeah, well, I haven't used one, and I'm not going to be buying one to find out. I mean, I've tested for Metabo, I've tested for Makita, I've tested for Dyna Braid, I've tested for a number of power tool companies. I've tried for years to get power tool companies to take on my design, my ideas. And they're not concepts and drawings, they're just an idea with specs, which I can talk about if you want, because I'm at the point now where I've tried since 2006 to get dual and variable orbit polishers made, and no one wants to do it and doesn't want to spend the money or some other shit. So it's like, I haven't got the money or the engineering know how to do it, so I'll just tell you what it is. But I like the ergonomic design of the HLR 75, but I just haven't used it. I mean, I'm just not going to go out and spend the money on a machine because I'm retired now from that. I mean, I'm trying to do a bit of training, here or there, really get into the training side of things and teach on rotary and teach on DA and all the scientific, in-depth, crazy stuff that only certain people want to learn, and pad tech and all this other stuff.
So let's talk about what certain people want to learn and what everybody probably wants to learn is finishing. Because you earlier said your strength is finishing. So give me advice for when I'm having a tough time. I've compounded the scratches out, right? I've got all this DA haze, or I've got the rotary tracks, whatever. What advice do you have? Just start with the basics on how to finish down paint. And while you do that, I'm going to find a before and after, some before and afters.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling. Other way. Can you see the slides behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's right.
We're going back. Go ahead.
So look, one of the things is, and this is the thing I'm really fastidious about, is keep your pads clean. And I am anal as hell about that. And maybe too much, and maybe it cost me a bit of time. That's, what that is, that one there? That's the right side before I did anything, and the left side's denim with a rotary. Look at how good it finished. That's because of that single polish system. Yeah, that's denim with a rotary with no marks left behind.
Oops, that's
so.
Funny.
Yeah.
I would like to talk to you about denim, but I'd like to stay on track with polishing, just because I think that's more applicable to people.
The main thing I see that there's a lot of good people out there these days that really know what they're doing, probably better than me in a lot of ways. I don't mind that at all because I'm a humble guy. I don't care. It's like I've always just done my thing, and if I'm good, I'm good. If not, I'm not. I just let other people's opinions of me say what they are. But too many people that get it wrong, they don't spend enough time with the first step to correct and refine prior to going to then the second step and the third, or just a second. They go, let's say for example, rotary back in the good old days. It was 1500 RPM, do 3, 4, 5, 6 passes, whatever you're doing, and then just stop. Now, with some paints, that'll work out okay. You'll have some, if you're using wool, for example, that isn't deburred wool, which is a whole different subject again, you're going to have some holograms, but you can control how bad or good your holograms become or end up. You can make them extremely bad to where you can see them in the shade, like severe swirls. You can have them light, very, very moderate, or virtually non-existent, or even none at all. So the thing is, the first step is the foundation of your gloss. Make sure you don't skimp with your correction side. And even if you're doing a 30-second pass with a non-diminishing abrasive compound, 30 seconds or 45 seconds, not a minute, minute and a half, 3 minutes, like I used to do, with non-diminishing, it's not so bad. If you're doing rotary correcting, even DA correcting, I like to do whatever speed you start at. If you go from slow to high and then back down or whatever, start at whatever you do, whatever speed you're doing. Could be repairs on speed 4, 5, 3. I'm a 3 guy. And then slow it right down. Or at least it's, increase your arm speed, slow it down. If you're rotary correcting and you're doing 400, 500, 600, 800, 1,000, anywhere in there, even more, especially if you're going to the higher ones like 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, back it down, blow the pad out.
So what I'm hearing is your big advice is to refine within the step before you go to the less aggressive step.
Yeah.
So if I'm microfiber, dual action polisher, compound, and I'm hazing the shit out of the paint, back it up, try to gloss up that haze a little bit, for lack of a better term, before I go to my foam and polish.
And look, I know it does sometimes mean time. And people said to me, oh, that's more time. But then you're gaining it on the second one, because you can either be somebody that's compounding quickly and getting the marks out, then I'll clean it all up later with the next step, and you're doing 50% fixing and 50% polishing, or you're doing 90% polishing and 10% fixing. So make your step one as the foundation of your gloss. If you do a shit job with that and you skimp it, you can do 16 steps after that. It still won't look as good. I'm not saying spend ages. Spend whatever time it has to get the marks out, whether you do fast arm speed, slow arm speed, or whatever speeds you do, but always correct and refine it down as best as you can, even if it's just 30 seconds with increased arm speed, slower machine speed. There's so many paints out there that like it when you slow it down, and then obviously after if you've rotary corrected or you've DA corrected and you've got some fine holograms or some fine micro marring or haze, which I barely ever get, use more pads than people say. Most people say 2 to 4. I say 6 to 12. Or if you've got a pad washer, if you've got a Persistent 4000 pad washer, you can use less, but I still find that eventually, it's better just to use a lot of them, because you reduce the heat cycles on them. And then pretty much, if you're going to use a DA to finish out with, 12 mil or smaller orbit, in most cases, I find finishes better than a 15, a 19, or a 21, or a 25, which does exist in China, 25 mil orbit.
Really? In China, they have 25 millimeters.
Yeah, you can buy one for like $100 from.
Also, I'm looking at the hood here. It's just like rotary hologram to hell.
Yeah, that's not one of my photos of. That's just something I've actually seen before. So and look.
Anyway. So
here's the thing. I'm trying to do this in the most shortest version I can, because it's a complicated thing with a lot of variables. But with diminishing abrasive compounds and polishes, a lot of people don't work them through enough to cycle them down, get that emulsion break where it goes from either somewhat transparent to really transparent, or white to to transparent. They don't work the diminishing abrasive down enough. They can underwork them or overwork them. With non-diminishing, it's pretty much 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, minute and a half, whatever you're doing, and you can do one speed and stop and whatever else, and you're pretty much good to go in most cases. But don't skimp on your first step. I mean, with the single polish system I've used for the last 13 years, there's 3 different liquids, one for hard paint, one for medium, one for soft. They all can do their own thing of correcting and finishing those paints. But the second one and the third one can be used as finishing polishes only after the other. So,
can you name the brand real quick?
Some people might not like it that I do, but I will. Yeah, Expert Polishes.
Okay. Is there something wrong with saying that?
Oh, not really. It's this brand that no one probably has ever heard of, but they were the first people to come out with single polish system that's water based and basically burn mark proof. You know, you can have a rotary with a foam pad and it all suddenly dries out, and all it will do is just leave a little tiny mark, and you would just go. Boop. Whereas all the other stuff that's out there, most of it, well, 80% of what was out there probably 10 years ago, or even still today, some of it, you're using a foam pad and you're buffing away, and all the lubricant, the polish starts to dry out, and then all the lubricant goes with it, and then your foam pad just puts a big burn mark in the panel, and either it's knackered or you got to sand it out. Whereas with his, it just doesn't happen. You just don't
it's hard for me to hear this without having tried the polishing system before. I also just realized the entire podcast I didn't have my my mic plugged in, so I'm really excited about that. Matt, I wonder. No, you're all right, man. You're all right. We're just keeping it real here. Can we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Do you want to share some final thoughts? It happens to be evening my time, and I want to get my kids to bed because you're in Australia.
Yeah.
11 or 17 million hours. I don't even know the time difference, but
let's try and get as much in as we can in this time we've got, because I feel like I haven't really given you much at this point. With finishing, obviously clean pads is very important. I mean, if you use a fiber and a DA, I would probably do a pass, maybe 2 passes. Then I will blow that pad out with liquid and then rub it, and then compressed air, and then I will do a final pass with just a fraction more polish maybe. And my micromarring of haze I'll leave behind is virtually non-existent unless it's paint that pad's too aggressive for. And finishing out with a DA or a rotary, look, there's so many different variables, but it's pretty much use less liquid, and it's all about grip and slip. When you're correcting, you want grip, and when you're polishing to finish out, you want slip. But it's pretty much just, you can cut slow machine speed to a moderate, even a high machine speed. If you go high, I always find that if you back it down with your first step, slow your machine speed down, increase your arm speed a little bit, especially with rotary, which makes it finish out a bit better than just going slow. Then do high speed polishing initially with your second step, then slow it right down. That I find helps. There's sometimes where you can force rotation and DA polish and pretty much high speed 5 like Mike Phillips does, and no issue. And some other paints will do that and won't like it. But it just comes down to high quality polishes, high quality European foam, and keep the pads clean, blow them out all the time, change them very often. It just keeps you in the optimum working window. If you use 6 to 12 pads, it sounds like a lot. Even if you've got a pad washer, there's people that can pad wash and use the same pad and go over and over again. And it's a great system, the pad washer, but I just like using more pads because I've done half a bonnet, or half a hood as they call it in America. I'll change to another one of the same type. Done a door, change pad. Done a front fender, change pad. I'm always then working very clean and not having to go back and fix stuff. So it might seem backwards to go, I'll spend the time on step 1 a bit more than I normally would to refine it as I'm cutting. So I'm polishing to correct, not cutting. So I'm cutting, but then I'm for refining, and then have less marks to fix or none, and just be spending the time to polish, and you'll finish out faster and easier. And it seems like that's slower. But if you do a crappy job of your first step and you've cut the marks out, but it looks like arse, your second and third step, you're just fixing more stuff than you're actually polishing.
Amen. So I've been there many times.
But the other thing I want to say as well, which my mentor has told me, and I take pretty much everything he says as gold because he was been polishing for decades, and he's a painter and a chemist and
Who
director of
is
this
he?
company that makes it. He's a guy out of Sydney,
Top secret.
pretty much.
Okay.
But
Anyway, your
he's a guy
mentor
out of
told you
Sydney.
what?
He basically said, look, a lot of compounds and polishers in the past, and still some to this day, they basically, the abrasives they've got in them, they buy them off the shelf from a supplier in bags. They don't have them mined and remanufactured like he does and do his own calcination and all that. And too many of the products in the past, whether they were either water and oil, not oil and water, they were solvent oil based, but the abrasives would tear at the paint or gouge at it to correct it, but then couldn't finish well. Especially your crystalline silica abrasives. They cut really good, but they finish like crap. I mean, very, very, hardly any of them finish any good. Then, of course, you got aluminium oxide, you got ceramic aluminas and all this other thing. So not all compounds, polishers, and even single polish systems are all, equal. Some of them out there correct, but they do it the wrong way. They're too gougy. They have abrasives that could be hexagon shaped, or they start out at a triangle. The edges then get sheared off and it becomes round, and then it becomes like a ball bearing and it's rolling along. But some of them just don't. All they do is just gouge and tear, and they correct fast, real quick, but they just don't allow you to get a good finish. Then you're chasing marks. I saw a video, probably several years ago from a particular brand, and the guy Rotary, and I won't say who, but I respect the company. They make good stuff now. But the guy was demonstrating on the rotary to correct. He corrected with a wall pad, and he was probably 1500 RPM, 1200 or whatever. I'm not sure if he slowed down much. And he goes, "This is what you're going to get." And it was just hologram swell city. And I went, I don't get that. I mean, on medium hardness paints with a denim pad with a single polish system, I get no marring from a rotary with denim or velvet in some cases. If paints are hard enough, even just medium hard paints. And then he goes, okay, I'm going to black foam this with a rotary finish. Yeah, and he did, and he got it out. But it's better if you can make your marks after you've done your first step as either extremely shallow, okay-ish, or none at all if you're DA correcting especially. You can't always make them have none. You might have a little bit of haze from a microfiber. You might have a little bit of stuff from wool. But if you make it far less nasty, your second step is more polishing and less fixing of those marks. It's like sanding with, say, 1500 and 3000 and then going, well, the 3000 left nothing behind, and all of a sudden it's all just disappeared. Like I've 2 seconds and it's gone, and I've taken them straight out, versus I've 3000 it poorly and I'm here grinding away for ages, chewing paint off. So, step one is the most important of all of them. So, and some people won't want to spend the time.
I hear you loud and clear on that. I think it's great advice, and I think it's something that when we get into a hurry, we oftentimes don't do. Matt, is there a way that if folks want to continue the conversation, they can hit you up on Facebook perhaps? And because the conversation is not going to end. If I let this go, we're going to talk for 6 hours, and I got to put my kids down.
I know, I can too.
I got to do this now, but I do appreciate your wisdom, and I think everyone gets a sense of kind of your level of passion. Like, it's very clear to everybody. So I want to offer you that if you'd like to. Like, how would you like people to reach out if they're still curious?
Okay, so Instagram, I've got a page called Detailology73, which is my old business one of my old business names. On Instagram, send me a message there. Facebook, just Matthew Gibb. Look for the photo of me with my Bruce Lee standee from the I think it's what was it? Game of Death.
I found
He's wearing the yellow one piece. Yep, it's got and my blue and my two. I think it was a cover photo of my two cars. So you can send me a message there on Facebook via that. You'll find me there pretty easy. Email Matt's Magic with 2 T's. Matt's Magic Detail Tech, TECH @gmail.com. Send me an email via that way, and pretty much that's how you can get a hold of me. And look, there's people in the industry that probably know more than I do and faster than me at correcting and finishing and whatever else. But we've all got different levels of knowledge and wisdom, and we can all share it. I think knowledge shared is better than knowledge unshared and wasted.
Well, I can tell
So
you love sharing it. You love helping people, and there's people out there who need a go-to. Like, what do I do when? Right? If you don't have that
yeah,
as a detailer, like the guy you can call when you're up against it and you don't know what to do, you're really missing out. And so I don't think you want to be that to everybody, but I feel with you is you have a very generous heart and you want to help people out. So I hope that through
yeah,
this
absolutely.
podcast, maybe somebody out there learns something. It helps them along their journey. God knows I learned so many
Yep,
things
it's a
from
deep rabbit
podcasts
hole.
along the way. It's a deep rabbit hole. And
Yeah, and I've gone down
speaking of
it, gone
that,
down it for I've gone down that rabbit hole about 40,000 hours at a guess. So yeah, a bit of time, a lot of different machinery, a lot of different pads, and a lot of practice, and a lot of learning, and a lot of reading, and a lot of commenting, and yeah. Anyway,
and here we are.
it's
So
been a privilege to be on here, even if it's just this was a short one. That's okay. I understand.
it
It's been
feels
good.
short, under an hour. I've been doing these for 2 hours, and everyone says keep them under an hour. So this is what it feels
Yeah,
like to like actually try to keep it brief. It feels like there's more to
and
talk
it goes
about.
quick. I
Which
don't
there
mind
should be
2
more
hours.
to talk about. There should be more to talk
I mean,
about.
there's
This is not the end.
two
So
hours. 2 hours with Jason. I watched that whole thing all the way through. And it doesn't bother me. But I have a very long, very focused attention span. Some people today don't have that. And look, some people just don't have the free time. I've got tons of free time because I can't work for a year with this illness I've got. I've got to deal with this stuff, and I feel fine all the time, but I'm just internally, my immune system's all screwed up. So, I've got the time, and I just want to listen. I want to learn, and that hunger to understand why, what is going on, what's happening under the pad, what's going on here, and what's this about. That's the only reason I've gotten the knowledge I have, is just ask a pile of questions, try a bunch of stuff firsthand, real world experience of just practice. What's happening here? What's going on there? What caused that? And asking my mentor a bunch of questions on the phone for like 15 years on chemistry and all that stuff. The only reason I've even got the knowledge I have, that's it. It's just purely just I want to know why.
you're not the only one, my friend. Hey, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
That's all right. I appreciate it.